I think we can all admit that for the most part, our attention spans are relatively short. We all know how easy it is to be distracted, to lose focus as our mind can wander a bit. And it's a great obstacle to our growth in faith because there are so many things going on around us, so many voices speaking to us. We need a kind of single-mindedness and a keen focus to stay on the path that God has planned for us. I think this is the clear theme of our gospel today. It's a continuation from last week's passage from chapter 9 of St. Luke's gospel. Last week we heard Peter confess that Jesus was indeed the Christ, the anointed one. Jesus told the apostles that he then had to journey to Jerusalem to give his life for them. And he told them that they too, and indeed all of us who desire to follow him, must deny ourselves, take up our cross daily to follow him. Now we hear how Jesus is going toward that journey. We are told that he is resolute in his determination to go to Jerusalem. Indeed, he is uniquely single-minded and focused because he and the Father are one, so that his desire to do the Father's will is total and absolute. Then we see the contrast between that commitment and the reluctance of those to whom he speaks in our gospel. They hear the call to follow him and they make excuses. We must first acknowledge that the excuses are good ones. Jewish law required a son to bury his father. It's basic courtesy to say goodbye to someone's family. Indeed, in our first reading, we see how Elisha is permitted to return to his family. But Jesus' call is a unique one because it is the very call of God. It is God's promise that accompanies that call to fulfill the desire of every human heart now and then for eternity. And so our response must be total and absolute. And yet because of original sin, we are weak, and we at different times are like those persons in the gospel. We pause, we hesitate, we look for excuses, we rationalize our sinfulness. It is as if we place the call of Christ and the teachings of the church as one of many voices, almost on equal footing to be considered, those philosophical or psychological or social movements in our culture. The church indeed presents one voice, but it alone is the voice of God. God knows what is best for us. He made us for himself so that we could be filled with his love. He has a plan for us. And if we follow that plan, we will be totally happy. We will be fully satisfied. But he gives us the freedom to either accept or reject that. St. Paul alludes to that in our second reading. This, as he puts it, for freedom, Christ has set us free. Paul clearly knew, and he always taught, that salvation was won for us in Christ and not in adherence to the law. But he wants the readers to avoid that other extreme that can come, ignoring all law, living as one pleases. Remember Jesus' words in the Sermon on the Mount, I have not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. For each and every moral choice that we make has consequences. When we choose to succumb to our disordered tendencies to do what is selfish or dishonest or lazy or immoral in any way, these desires of the flesh, as Paul calls them, those decisions won't give us freedom. They will only further enslave us into those wounded passions and desires. But when we choose to do what is right and true, when we choose to love, living in the Spirit, in that manner that God designed for us, we are strengthened. We receive graces that bring us closer to Christ. We're then empowered to do good further, again and again. And in this way, we become totally free. because we've been released from those aspects of original sin that plague us. And so in all those things that we face every day, let us strive to keep our attention clearly on God, focused on His voice proclaimed in the church and His truth. And as we see from the example of Christ in our gospel, let us then strive to be firm and resolute, to follow Him unreservedly, persevering always without those excuses that can so easily detract from us and distract us, so that we may come to know that true and that lasting freedom and joy that He alone can give.